It's been over 10 years since the high school graduation party. Initially, I had no intention of attending, but my friends persuaded me to go. The party was on a Saturday in August, organized by a group of students from our class, and held in a beautiful venue in the city. It was an opportunity to see old friends after a long time. Despite my initial reluctance, I felt that missing out while my friends went would make me regret it. On the night of the party, I went to my friend Kayla's house, where we started the celebration early, then called an Uber to get to the venue. The party started at 8, so we arrived just in time. At 9, we entered the hall and saw familiar faces everywhere. There were at least 80 to 100 people, more than I expected. The hall was filled with people chatting and getting to know each other. Feeling a bit out of place as my friends mingled, I sat at a table and noticed a man I didn't recognize looking my way. Our eyes met briefly, and I looked away, curious about his identity. After a moment, I looked again and saw him approaching to sit next to me. He introduced himself as Connor and started chatting immediately, mentioning he couldn't ignore the glance we shared. Connor seemed nice, and his company was a welcome distraction from feeling alone. We talked for a while until he asked for my phone number before returning to his friends. After we parted ways, I was alone again, and after finishing my meal, went to look for my friends who were scattered around, talking to different people. I joined Kayla in a conversation with some others. My friends were all tipsy, and so was I, but not to their extent. I felt it was time to go home, and just then, Connor texted me, asking if I needed a ride home as he was leaving soon. I agreed and met him outside the building. There were many people saying goodbye, so I discreetly left and found Connor by the front door. We walked to his car, a black coupe, the make of which I didn't recognize, not being much of a car expert. He asked me to enter my address into his phone, which I did, thanking him for the ride. As he drove, he took out 2 bottles from the back seat, handing me one, suggesting I drink plenty of water to avoid a hangover. I started drinking the water, but soon my phone began ringing persistently. Kayla, along with Marisa and Sophia in our group chat, was trying to reach me. I didn't answer the call, but read their texts asking where I was. I informed them I was getting a ride home. They kept pressing, asking who I was with. Kayla urged me to check the Facebook group where the party was organized. And then Marisa sent a screenshot of a post by a girl warning everyone about a random guy at the party, not from our school, introducing himself with different names to various girls. Ignoring calls from Kayla, I messaged her that I was with a guy named Connor. She replied in capital letters, alarmed, mentioning someone saw me leaving with that man. I felt sick, realizing the gravity of the situation, and decided I needed to escape at the first chance. When we stopped at a red light, I opened the door, told him I had to go, and ran as fast as I could. I sprinted to a restaurant's patio. Thankfully, he didn't follow but drove off. Immediately, I called Kayla, who told me to stay put while they sent an Uber to pick me up. I waited for about 15 to 20 minutes until they arrived. During that time, I started to feel the effects of alcohol and a dizziness that seemed abnormal, fearing he might have spiked the bottle he gave me. Fortunately, I hadn't drunk much. The worst part was realizing this man knew where I lived. We all stayed at Kayla's house that night. The next morning I drove home, but upon entering my apartment there was knocking at the door. I was scared until I saw it was my neighbor through the window. He asked if I knew the man who came looking for me the previous night, peering through the windows. I recounted the entire incident, and my neighbor was equally shocked, mentioning he had lied to the man, telling him he was at the wrong apartment. My neighbor's quick thinking likely prevented the man from finding me. After my lease ended, I moved to a different apartment in the same neighborhood to feel safer, grateful for the timely warnings from my friends. In high school, I was excited to attend and see all my old friends whom I hadn't seen for a long time. Of course, going to these places alone could be a bit scary, so it was planned that my friend Julia and I would go together. Julia was my best friend since middle school and knew everything I had been through. And I knew all about her experiences, including the situation I had with a guy named Tyler. Tyler was a guy with whom I had a history, meaning we had met a few times during the final year of high school. But he quickly began to exhibit crazy and obsessive behavior. When I stopped contacting him, he threatened me and acted aggressively, sending threatening messages saying he knew where I lived and when I was alone at home and more. One night he came to my house and threw stones at my window, and my dad had to go out to chase him away. Over time, he probably lost interest in bothering me. Tyler was friends with some of the odd kids in high school. Not the athletes, the cool kids, or the mysterious ones, just a somewhat strange group. Not many people liked him. I just hoped he wouldn't be at the reunion. We arrived and started talking to a lot of people. There were about 50 people in the hall, which was a good turnout based on our small class size. At some point during the night, I felt a tap on my shoulder from Tyler. When I turned to look at him, my heart sank. He said, "Can we talk?" Those were the first words after many years. I told him I hoped he was okay, but there was nothing to talk about, and I tried to walk away. He grabbed my shoulder and turned me around, saying, "You're really gonna be like this?" I pushed his hand away and said, looking around nervously, he said, okay, and walked away. It was a bad day, and I had to try hard to avoid thinking about Tyler and the situation. Everyone was on my side and agreed that he had always been weird and scary. I noticed he was with one of the boys I remembered, and they had been friends in high school. I joined a conversation with Julia and some other girls about the situation with Tyler and how he had just grabbed me. Everyone agreed he had always been weird and scary, known for being strangely aggressive towards girls. I didn't really see him after I saw him with his friend, assuming he left early, which greatly relieved me. We stayed there for a few more hours before leaving with some other girls to go to a nearby bar, and after a while, Julia drove me home. I had been seeing a girl named Phoebe for a few weeks after we met on a dating app and went out a couple of times. Our initial dates involved casual meetings and socializing with friends on weekends. Phoebe seemed nice, though she was reserved, and later I would learn more about her through my friends' true opinions. Phoebe invited me to an upcoming high school reunion party, expressing her reluctance to attend alone. Since she had met my friends and seemed to make an effort, I felt somewhat obliged to accompany her. The party was at a lavish house, which I thought was unusual compared to the typical bars or party halls used for such events. Upon our arrival, it became apparent that the ambience was different. People greeted Phoebe warmly, then turned their curious eyes towards me, asking probing questions about my life and background. Phoebe occasionally guided me away from these intense interactions to mingle with other guests, who also asked peculiar questions. As the evening progressed, the party atmosphere felt increasingly offbeat. There was no music, and the guests' attire was unusually formal and archaic. Feeling out of place, I told Phoebe I needed a moment alone and excused myself to explore the house and gather my thoughts. In the bathroom, I took a moment to text my friends about the bizarre nature of the party, contemplating how to persuade Phoebe to leave early. Suddenly, a young man knocked on the door, urging me in a hushed tone to leave the party immediately, hinting that Phoebe wasn't who she seemed. His warning heightened my anxiety, prompting me to discreetly exit the party. I managed to leave the house without drawing attention and hurried back to my car. feeling the weight of prying eyes as I departed. Once home, I reflected on the night's strange events and decided to distance myself from Phoebe. Further investigation into her contact details revealed inconsistencies, confirming my suspicions. I decided to cut off contact and shared my unsettling experience with friends and family, who also sensed something odd about Phoebe from the beginning. Thank you for watching. If you found these stories gripping, don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content. For another hair-raising tale, check out our suggested video. And if you're hungry for more eerie encounters, dive into our playlist featuring similar chilling narratives.